You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have Meridith Alexander, an optimal performance coach, author of 11 books, and who has been published 40 times in Forbes Coaches Council. Welcome, Meridith.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here as well. So what I'm really excited about is something that we were chatting about before, and that was your insight and knowledge on how to navigate major disruptions when we get off track and how we cope and thrive in that. So let's start hearing a bit about that, if you could.
Absolutely. That's such an important topic because most of us naturally pull back and feel like we need to regroup and almost wait for the tidal wave to pass. And often that's just not possible. So what I really specialize in doing and that I've learned to do myself is how do we take really impactful action even in the midst of crisis and in some cases catastrophe, right? And so what I've found is a great place to start is really asking three questions. The first, some of you might already be aware of, what can I control? It's amazing how much energy and focus and courage we really expend trying to control things that we have absolutely no business trying to control. So, what can I control? Often it's not the outer game, it's your inner game that you can control. So, therefore, the second question is what can my mind believe? And that goes back to the Ford quote, the Henry Ford quote of if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. So if that's true, which it is, how can I help my mind believe that what I want to accomplish is possible? So how can I get there? And then the third question is what might I be assuming that is not necessarily true? And often this is where we think we're looking at evidence, we're looking at precedent, we're imagining often the worst, right? So, what am I assuming that is not necessarily true? And so that leads us to how do we get our inner game to a place where we can look beyond our current set of circumstances? Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. So there's so many thoughts racing through my brain right now because I'm thinking of many different things. First of all, I'm thinking about the whole Viktor Frankl,
Yes.
okay, and writing about when he was in the concentration camp about how you control your destiny by your thoughts. So that's the first thing. The second thing is never make assumptions. I'm thinking, of course, about the four agreements. So the other thing is, Think and Grow Rich. We 95% or so of our lives are controlled by our subconscious. How do we rewrite the programming for the subconscious? So there's so much great stuff in here. So Meredith, how do people do this in crisis or derailment? How do they get to a point where they're not spinning, going back, stalling, getting stuck? What do they do?
I'm so glad you asked that. I was hoping you would. So, we have all heard the concept of the elephant in the room. Today, I want to introduce you to the concept of the elf in the room and always making sure that you have your elf at your side. So, what does that mean? Clearly, that's an acronym. So, E stands for the ability to envision. In my experience, having worked with hundreds of clients and in my own personal experience, the E part is our superpower. That means translates into our imagination. To our knowledge, we are one of the only species, if not the only species, that has been given the ability to imagine not just to experience what is going on. And yet, we tend, unless we train ourselves differently, to use that superpower to worry, to fear, to self-doubt. So the reason I call it the superpower is the first thing to do is to realize that you have the ability to use your imagination to offset what you are currently experiencing. Envision beyond. If what is happening right now is happening for me versus to me, what are the clues of what that might look like? And therefore, how can that inspire me to believe that I can get there? So that's the E. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And okay, so we're talking about what I call creative visualization. Shakti Gawan wrote a book on it. Think and Grow Rich talks about it. Psycho-cybernetics. So the imagining of the outcome, a mind movie, we also call it, the outcome, and that's very powerful because I've been doing that for years. Sometimes I forget, but whenever
Yes.
I do it, and it's also NLP, you're
Yes.
programming your brain with the outcome like a movie and imagining a good outcome or the desired outcome. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that, and one really, really important piece in that takes practice to get to is not to say, "I have to manifest, I have to envision so that it will work out," because what that means is that your belief underneath it is that you've got a big adversary, right? You have to relax. You're doing it because you enjoy the feeling of what you're envisioning. So it becomes that sense of normalcy.
And the thing is, we should also, when we're doing it, think about the lovely smells we're smelling and how we feel when we get it. So it's very important to do it with emotion, they say. Like, well, Think and Grow Rich talks about that to envision with emotion. So it's not just, okay, I'm imagining, this working out. And it's also, okay, there's a new element here that I haven't heard before, and I've heard a lot.
Mhm.
The new element that I just want to pay attention to and pull out is you said we don't do it with kind of a stressful attitude. I'm
Yes.
just paraphrasing,
Yes,
right?
yes.
We don't do it like I got to do this because then I'm going to get what I want. You're saying to do it, and I do relax. I love doing it. It's fun,
Yes.
and you're
Yes.
just imagining, oh, what would that be like? And children do this all the
Yes,
time.
that's exactly. Exactly, exactly, and it really is to kind of, extract ourselves from the, "I must do this in order to get that," right? It's still trying to figure out the how. How do I get this elusive thing? Instead of saying, "What if I already had this
Right.
thing that's not even so elusive?" Ooh, imagine, envision that and not worry about the how. Not worry about the how at all.
We got another thing here that I believe in. It's not about what you want, because that's kind of a grasping thing. And when we're doing affirmations, it's like, what do I want? It's more about, I already have. I worked with a coach that she said, when you're saying this is what I want, a desire,
Yeah.
it's sort of a grasping and I want it. So
Yeah.
you're saying the same thing, actually. It's amazing how all roads lead to Rome after a
Yes.
while. So you're saying, you're just imagining already having it. You already have it in your mind, in your subconscious. You're not going to get it. You have it. And you're just imagining what that's like to have it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and it's an experience that I had. We'll share what my backstory is in a moment, but it's an experience that I had where I really had to get myself from a place of total negative emotion to a
Mm,
place where again I had this forward momentum, and that meant I had to get myself, my mind to a place of not even believing but a sense of knowing in the form of expectation. So it's almost as if you allow yourself to envision being lifted up, pulled 2 years in the future, 5 years
mhm.
in the future, and everything that you could possibly have wished for and then some is in your current experience and that you are there. And then it's almost like you've got this men in black sort of that pen that makes you forget everything. And you're pulled back to where you currently are. But now it's the second time you're experiencing it. So you know that everything's going to end up being fine. In fact, wonderful, whatever that new wonderful is destined to be, because your future self, you had a moment to visit with and see that, "Ooh, this is gonna be sweet." This big, horrible experience, well, actually, it's part of the secret sauce to get you there. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm just thinking while you're speaking, I mean, you have to have a lot of mental fortitude to do what you did, because let's hear your story now. How did you learn all this? Let's hear that now.
Sure, sure, and we'll drift back to the L and the F in health for sure. I think it's fair to say that my story is a little bit of an unusual story, right? I had been a single mom entrepreneur for virtually all of my life. And so I was very, very fascinated with all of the outer game marketing, branding, all of these kind of things while I was raising my children. Fortunately, and I will say fortunately, you'll see why in a moment, I had terrible luck with my relationships. And it probably wasn't luck. It was just I made really bad choices. And as a result of those choices, it made me start asking some new questions. And specifically, the question of how did some people face these formidable challenges and evolve as bigger, bolder versions of themselves? And the reason I share this is because you just mentioned that it takes a lot of mental fortitude. Well, in the same sense that we one day wake up and decide we're going to go to the physical gym, and we walk into the gym, and at that moment, we're a complete novice and it feels really hard. All the equipment is intimidating. We get sore, we feel terrible, and we have to be willing to say, yes, it's hard, but I'm going to keep going because I'm going to love the results. Well, it's the same with the inner game. And fortunately, there was so much pain. See, sometimes pain can be a fantastic teacher, that it inspired me to keep going in spite of it being hard. So therefore, on February 19th, 2016, in the middle of my busy season, when the phone rang and someone told me that my youngest child, who had just graduated from Yale, who was on a fellowship in South America, she just built a school, had been crushed by a boulder and was not expected to survive. I had been working on what I call those inner game muscles, right? So therefore, when I had to hop on that plane and head to Colombia, South America, which is where the boulder fell and where my daughter ended up, it ended up being one of the most profound journeys of my life, because there I was at 30,000 feet, surrounded by darkness, and having to ask myself the ultimate question, what am I going to make this mean? Right? What am I going to make this mean, not only in the context of my own life, but in the context of my 22-year-old daughter's life? And as I sat on that plane, going back to those three questions, I realized that I could not control the outer game, but I sure as heck could play a mean inner game. So in that moment, I began to ask myself more questions. That second question would help my mind believe that some sort of positive outcome, whatever that meant in our case, was possible. So this goes back to the elf, and that's language, right? So the question was, had anyone ever experienced something, achieved something that everyone else said was impossible? Well, that became laughable because there I was flying in this huge tin can at 30,000 feet, which, of course, literally, when they were first inventing the airplane, they were literally crashing and burning. And people said, "You're absolutely insane." So for me, it became, what can my mind believe? Yes. And so rather than saying my biggest challenge right now is figuring out how am I going to show up in a way that I can help my daughter, no, 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 no. It became my biggest commitment right now is to show up in a way that I can help my daughter. So that shift in language, in words, began the process of energizing myself. And of course, leaning into the question of what might I be assuming that is not necessarily true. Well, the assumption was just because medical precedent said people don't survive these injuries, well, that must
Right.
be true. You following me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the F is focus. Are you going to focus on the presence of what you want or the lack of the presence of what you want?
Okay, let me just interject there. The lack of the presence. That's what people focus on. They
Yes.
focus on the lack. Now, I can't even, when you were talking, I can't even imagine what would be going through my head. But all I do know is the average person's not asking themselves those questions. The average person is in a state of trauma and shock, worrying and waiting and stressing. So even that you were sitting and saying, what is this going to mean? Instead of, oh my gosh, my daughter, because, mama bear brain kicks in. And most people just panic. I mean, I would be in a state of panic. Maybe I was asking, would I be asking those questions? I don't know. I sort of panic anything that happens to my daughter. I'm just, what was happening? So I think that that's incredible that you were even there before you turned up, right? Okay.
Yes.
So that's amazing. Let's fast forward to very amazing. And we got the F, we got the ELF now. Okay.
Yes.
So again, the E is
Envision. L is the language that helps your mind believe, and F is focusing on the presence of what you want.
now I want to fast forward because I want everybody to know what happened. Like fast forward, what's going on now? Well, your daughter's alive, first of all.
So, miracle upon miracle, Skylar ended up surviving the unsurvivable. This coming February 2026, it will have been 10 years after that fateful boulder dropped. There was also more of an invisible boulder, which has ended up being an amazing thing that because of the time we spent in the ICU, it destroyed the business that I had previously had. And yet, it opened up the doorway to the purpose and the passion that I had myself been spending a lifetime searching for. What am I really here to do? How can I make that impact? And Skylar this past year was crowned Ms. Wheelchair Florida 2025. So, in the process of becoming, creating this successful business as a coach, as a speaker, as now the co author with my daughter of this amazingly successful children's book series, which is all about empowering future generations on the inner game. We have discovered a dynamic duo kind of secret that achieving the impossible, especially for high achievers, is often not about the how on an individual basis at all. It's about the who. Who are you going to align yourself with? Who are you going to show up as? Who are you going to decide you are in this moment, even if you feel like you have a history of being someone else entirely. Does that make sense?
Meredith, you got me all teary eyed here. I'm just so inspired with your story. I don't know how many people could possibly turn this around and because you are the leader here. Your daughter was lying in clearly lying in so you're the leader here. That you're working together, you're writing children's books. Miss Wheelchair. I mean, that's adorable. All right. So I just have to applaud you as a human being and a mom I'm literally just so inspired. I think I've ever had tears on this show before, but I can't even imagine what that would be like. But you've turned this around and that you've made it a good life for you and your daughter. It's incredible. So, applaud yourself because this is not like an average person. So I'm imagining with all that you've been through that you can really lead people in very hard situations to also see the word success is not like big enough for this, but a very favorable outcome, let's just say, right? Better than favorable because you created a life not only that your daughter survived, but she has a life and she's thriving. That's amazing. So I just want to take a moment just to tell you how amazing you are.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I think one of the big takeaways from this is that I always want to emphasize I am no one special. I was no one special. I was your typical single mom entrepreneur with low self-esteem, feeling like, oh my God, the harder I chase, the harder I fail. There's never enough of me. How do I be all these things? And it literally was a point in my life where, Skylar had graduated and I felt like, okay, I can finally figure out who I am now. And then, boosh, the boulder falls. You can choose how you show up.
Well, you've proven that. I mean, you have proven that. Nobody can say, well, but I have this. I don't know if you could find a bigger problem than the one you had to solve. Right? I mean, it'd be hard to find one, right? So I think that you've pretty much had the acid test and you've proven your theory that there is a way, because I do believe that really the key is emotional regulation. It
Yes.
really is. You've
Yeah.
managed to master emotional. I'm not saying that you weren't stressed and losing your mind, because I'm pretty sure you
No.
were.
Yeah.
But you managed with all that, the emotions, to regulate enough to lead through this. So that's awesome. So Skylar's written some books with you.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're working together?
In fact, you'll laugh. Well, this is kind
Aw.
of mirror image, but the title of book number 1, the whole book series is titled My Friend the Boulder. So
Ah.
what we have done is taken the boulder, turned the boulder into a character who is very envious and resentful that Princess Happiness, i.e. Skylar, is in the valley. She's a human. They're all playing and having a wonderful time while the boulders have to stand guard up on the mountain. And he gets so angry that he can no longer control himself and he comes plummeting down
Aw.
right on Skylar. And then he's horrified he didn't intend to hurt her. So he reaches out to the wise fairy of the valley, i.e., me, moi, and says, can you help? And the wise fairy says, I can't make her go back to the way she was. We'll have to figure out how to go forward. So every single one of these books teaches some of those inner game foundations. Like, yes, we have scars. We all have scars, whether they're visible, like my daughter's, where she has scars all over her face, or one of her eyes is permanently winking. We all have scars, but our scars cry out that we have faced some very difficult things and we have emerged bigger and bolder thanks to them.
Right, and I'm imagining you had a lot of mental health issues to help your daughter through.
Yes, although I will say that my daughter's middle name literally means happiness in Japanese, and so she spent a good portion of her life being raised with me. Even when I would drive her to school, I would have Abraham Hicks tapes playing. The law of attraction, which I like to look at that word as a contraction for attracting the right action, the law of attraction. So fortunately, she was known for being a yes person. And so it really was uniting our forces and saying, why on earth would I choose that road of like, oh, poor me, I'm not going to get to do the things, versus saying, okay,
Well, accepting what is and making the
yeah.
most of it, right? Yeah.
And what if this is actually, for lack of a better phrase, what if this is part of the ask and it is given? If I want to go out there and make a powerful impact in the world, who am I to say that this isn't the path that will allow me to do that?
Right. There's also some element, I don't know if you're a believer or anything, there's an element here of accepting God's will.
Mhm.
I mean, really, if we accept God's will, no matter what, we're good. And we're not good at that. Human beings are not good. We're kicking and screaming. It's sort of like, sure, let's accept God's will, but I hope it benefits me. Or
Yes.
let's accept God's will and I hope I'm going to be wealthy. So, right?
Your point saying, and this is what it needs to look like when God is manifesting the will,
Exactly. And that's
right?
hard. It's hard for
Yes.
human beings. We struggle with that because we have our desires getting in all that. So, well, listen, this has been extremely inspiring. So, Meredith, before we close off,
Yes.
what's a mindset? I mean, we've had a lot of mindset, but what's like your motto for mindset that you want to share with people?
The motto for mindset is to remember that it's not in spite of our boulders that we succeed, to use your word success, whatever success means to you. It's thanks to these boulders that we discover just how high we are capable of soaring. And that reinforces that when we hit those limits, the new normal thought should be, now I've reached the beginning.
It's interesting. The new normal thought, because we've got to get the normal thought. The new normal is, again,
Yes, is the sky is not the limit. The limits are just the beginning.
there we go. It's just the beginning. That's food for thought. If you really think through that, folks, that's just the beginning because we sort of say, okay, I'm going to arrive. Okay. So, and then what next? Well, Meredith, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you, listeners. And we hope that you've really enjoyed this. And we would love for you to subscribe, of course, or write a great review for this one because Meredith's amazing. And we will see you on the next show. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jean Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jean Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.